We'll discuss integrative learning supporting the transition between business schools to the job market. Now, the Association of American Colleges and Universities have described integrative learning as being the key change in university education for the 21st century. Now, the concept behind integrative learning is that students take ownership of their own learning. Becoming critical inquiries were able to make meaningful connections between different disciplines and utilize critical thinking to real-life problems. Employability is arguably the most important outcome of higher education for students. However, with online learning, shifts towards remote working, and the limited internship opportunities, these all make the transition of fresh young graduates from their familiar business school environment to the job market often difficult. So what exactly are the factors that widen the gap between business schools and the job market? More importantly, how can integrative learning, which increases understanding, retention, and application of business concepts, act as a bridge to overcome these obstacles? As such, in this seminar, we will delve into these matters and explore how integrative learning supports the transition between business schools and the job market. Now, welcoming our first speaker of the seminar, Dr. Hadrian Djajadikerta. Dr. Hadrian is an associate professor of accounting in the School of Business and Law at Edith Cowan University, Australia. With over 2 decades of research, teaching, and academic leadership roles, Dr. Hadrian also has numerous publications in quality journals and received multiple accolades, including the Vice Chancellor's Excellence in Research Supervision Award. I would like to welcome speaker Ms. Elaine Liew. With over 30 years of experience in technology, Ms. Elaine is also the co-founder of GDEXA, the Global Digital Excellence Association that's built a software-as-a-service platform to kickstart and manage the personal journey of digital education. Let us now welcome Ms. Elaine.
My name is Elaine Liew. I'm based in Singapore. GDEXA, as explained by Vania, is actually the Global Digital Excellence Association. This was formed in 2018 with 2 other individuals that are based in Europe. Just a little bit about myself. When I came out of university, you could see that I graduated, did my bachelor and honors degree. That's where I started my technology world. So today I have spent too long in the technology world, more than 30 years, and the various technology corporation that I've been with. Now, alongside with that, I put a bit of a profile, what else I do as part of the learning. As the earlier presentation showed, that you need to learn, you need to reflect, you need to know what is relevant. So in my life, I've always been a learner. I did INSEAD way back 10 years ago. And then I did London School of Economics on Politics and International Affairs. I did cybersecurity from Harvard. I recently attained a data protection practitioner course this year. And since 2 years ago, I started a program attendance from United Nations, learning about how the works of United Nations as well as the art of diplomacy. And this year I completed another program with United Nations on digital diplomacy. And I'm very grateful to be part of this forum, sharing with you my journey. Has been very colorful, but certainly not easy, especially when we are trying to expand from our comfort zone. Now, let's take a look at what I have clubbed together. Emotions. So we talk about emotions. What is it that in academic, whether you are master, PhD, or any field, including myself, emotions is something that you learn both internally, how your environment shaped you and how the crisis or the failure will shape you or conflicts will shape you as you go. Can people say that today I score 50% on emotion, tomorrow I score 100? Cannot. And even if you think today you have done well on your emotions, you are cool, it does not mean that tomorrow you cannot get angry, you cannot get disappointed, you cannot feel betrayed, and you cannot feel that way, right? So emotions is something in the world that you can never gauge, compare, put a rating, and self-proclaim. Emotions is only something, it's a cross of your mind and your rationale and your thinking and the facts, all of that help you shape it. But also emotion is a precursor to many eventual decisions that you may take. So emotions is also very affected by your self-belief, others' expectation, and the culture, and a lot of other factors that are environmental. Emotions could be also coming from pressure or leisure or pleasure, right? So emotions is something that no matter what, even you could be 50 years in the industry, you could have that emotional stand that you wish you never had behaved that way. So emotions is something never going to be able to put a marks, but yet it is very important. Emotion shapes the way how we will tackle, how others see us, how others judge us, how others appraise us. And sometimes emotion is the one that crash in the working world. All right. And if you look at the history of a lot of leadership, including national level of leaders, emotions crash their success instantly. The second is crisis. Well said. One of you said crisis. You can't learn crisis. Crisis is shaped at that moment or as a result of many circumstances that's brought forth by either yourself, others, or collective. And crises are situations that put you onto tests. Tests, tests, and tests. Sometimes you fail. Sometimes you get it faster. Sometimes you fail more. Sometimes you get it right away. And from crisis, you learn. But the danger is after you learn and you become expert, then you become complacent again. So in the journey of learning and of dealing with crisis, we must know that how do we become wiser is through the falls and the scars that you have. But once you realize you master how you run and not to fall, you become complacent and you forgot about the distance, you forgot about the weather condition and the foreign land that you are in. So you'll find that learning and crisis and complacent is a vicious circle. And when you get too complacent and you become stubborn and ignorant, or you're not listening, crisis hit you again. Sometimes crisis because you never take early action and decision. All right, it can be that way as well. Now, all of you talk about relationship. You talk about social relationship, interaction, and communication. Relationship is the hardest, is even harder than emotion, right? Because it's not one-to-one relationship. It's one-to-many, many-to-many, internal, external, cross-border. In a multinational, there are matrix organization, there's remote, there's direct management, there's indirect management, there's hard hierarchy, there's soft power, there is unknown influence, it is invisible influence. There are also other corporate guidance on how a culture should be. So relationship is very difficult to manage as well. All right. So this is something it is very difficult to learn from also in any academic. Time-bound outcome. Let me just talk about this a little bit. You know, I will just compare when you are in academic and then in the real world. All right. No offense on any of that world because I've gone through both. When you go through a test, you score a mark. Then the next semester, you score a mark. End of the year, probably you take a weighting, you sum it up, there is a mark. Let's say you score 30% in your first semester, you fail, all right? But then the next semester, you got 80, you pass. And then another semester, you fail again, you got 10. At the end of the year, you got 50. You can average it out and you think I have the next year. But in the real world, in a working world, there's no next year. If you have not been performing and you haven't got a consistent time-bound outcome that you produce that will meet the management and stakeholder requirement, you are not a performer, regardless of your point. And as a result, you may not be in that role anymore. All right. So time-bound outcome to what the stakeholder asks of you, the business asks of you, your management and your board directors, it is a very, very realistic, and real life time-bound outcome that you can never reverse. So in order to achieve a time-bound outcome, you got to be very sure whatever resources you do, decision you make, you got to be always right. You cannot try and error. You always got to optimize your resources. You always got to maximize your profit and outcome. You must always do more with less. You must always be able to take pressure. You must always be able to be proactive. Now, all that is very complicated, right? Because it needs you to have the right emotion, go through a lot of crisis, time-bound outcome, and not only so, to be able to ask for help when you need to and call up. So time-bound outcome is very important in the business world. Self-awareness. Sometimes when we operate in a world, in a working world, we lack the self-awareness. When we do business planning, we plan for the business. We plan for the business outcome. We plan for others. We appraise others. As a manager, you appraise others on performance. But do you actually do self-awareness and appraisal, self-appraisal, self-critic? No. Not many people will sit down and say, let me write down a report about myself. I have not seen in the real world many people write about themselves. We've seen writing email to escalate others. We have heard people complain about others through the manager. What about complain about yourself? What about self-critic? What about self-awareness? And this is a very important moment that you need to set aside for yourself day to day, regardless of level, because you need to match what you think you are and what others see of you and whether that matches. Sometimes it is not about just time-bound outcome alone. It is about way of how you achieve it as well. So the self-awareness of how you handle your emotion, how you handle your crisis, how you create relationship, how you deliver time-bound outcome, they are all intertwined. It's very important. But last but not least, this world is made of humans. As long as the world have more than 2 humans, there will be conflict, there will be mismatch, there will be also hierarchical influence and decision-making. Knowing what it takes to operate effectively and with the right emotional intelligence and the right timing is important. So putting aside factual information, functional knowledge, a lot of the working world encompasses a lot of the factors to make you a little bit more smooth in your journey. In my working life of 30 over years now, I would not even dare to say at a moment that I'm successful, because success is only at that moment. You're time bound, you got it right. Relationship, you got it a bit smoother. You are aware of what you need to grow. And because you produce your time-bound outcome, you're successful, but doesn't mean tomorrow you will be. So never, never in my ever life, even until now, I've never viewed myself as a successful person, because it's such a fluid life that we go through. All right. Now I'm going to just pause here. This could be very confrontational or provocative. I want to hear your view as you hear me speak. What do you think? These factors, does it resonate well? You can respond in the reaction, yes or no. I think there's a reaction button, or you can type in the chat, or you can speak up.
Start dulu.
So maybe Vanya, you can help me to see if there are any reaction.
I'm checking right now. Maybe if you'd like to react, everyone can react in the chat. Or just give maybe the thumbs up in the reaction button.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, there's some comments already coming in the chat. Someone said, yes, it resonates very clearly, and they agree with you. Someone else says that's real and factual. It's very well put. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, so you don't have to agree with me, because sometimes I may not be right, but my life and journey has been colorful and not easy. I've gone through the emotional management. I've gone through a failure and crisis. I don't know what is important in relationship apart from my own self focus on success an outcome. Sometimes I miss my time-bound outcome. Sometimes I forgot to do a self-reflect when I become too critical of others. Sometimes I forgot what is the power of management and taking the right decision at the right time, not just from my management as a manager to my team. So these are my learning. Now, if you look at all of that, there are no schools that can cover all of that. We could only go through this journey ourselves, but come forward with a learning mindset. The reason why I've been learning all the while is because I know there's certain functional knowledge I lack, certain academic, weightage that I need to constantly refresh. But that said, the most important thing in the learning journey, it is making relationship with other students, instructors, or facilitator or professor, because they have other network that they can learn from. So I've been enjoying that power and putting into practice. Now, the last part I like to say is that what is the call to action for all of us here? If you are an educator, thinking through how we have been communicating with our students or imparting the rules, or sorry, not the rules, the content of the academic, can we pause a moment and take more to say, hear from business world presenters, hear from external webinar? Let's take more case study outside to experiment, to model the real world, all right, so that we could bridge the academic content and what are occurring in the fluid world closer and closer. We're not saying the two worlds are different. We're saying that bridging the world closer to make the journey smoother and real and to prepare the students. So how do we help students to navigate as part of their daily learning? How do educators help students to communicate these challenges out to others? Communication skill, presentation, engagement, relationship. And sometimes when a student is out of the school, they have such an intimate and private and valuable relationship with an educator like yourself. They take you as their mentor, the coach, as their senior. But sometimes when we leave school, we forgot to bridge that relationship again, to come back to the educator of theirs in their life, or the mentor, or the teacher, or the senior, and to share their progress. And sometimes these sharing and learning is both ways. The students, when they are at the workforce, coming back to the uni, visiting their professor, telling them their real life, that helps to bridge that learning. I feel that sometimes when students leave the school, they forgot to come back. And I think what we could do, one of the call to action is bring the students back onto the forum, get the students back to speak back to the alumni in the real world in that. So I think this is what I think the call to action could be. But again, I'm going to give you, again, 30 seconds. Do you feel that you have a call to action for yourself as an educator? Do you feel, if you are a student attending this forum right now, do you have a call to action? It's very important the call to action is to yourself and not to me. All right, but with that, I hope that after the 30 seconds, take your time as I transition this presentation to the next speaker. This is the GDEXA I founded, and you're welcome to do a bit of checkup. With that, thank you very much. Over to Vanya. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Elaine. So it's certainly very insightful and interesting. So welcoming our last but certainly not least speaker, he's the founder and president of MonsoonSIM, an entrepreneur with over 30 years of enterprise software development experience. He's also a consummate speaker in various international conferences on business simulation and experiential learning. Without further ado, let us welcome our final speaker, Mr. Abdy Taminsyah.
I do not need to say this, but because this is from Edith Cowan University, I really like to put it up here, because one of our speakers is from Dr. Hadrian you've heard. So this is why we invited him, because the university itself is proud of them having this integrative learning into their curriculum. Okay, so from our point of view, where do we get our working knowledge? This is not from me, but this is taken from the expert. I think this is very famously discussed in the internet. It's how we get our knowledge. Expert says that only 10% of our knowledge come from work, formal education. This is when we go to work. Okay, the rest will be from experience and social learning. And that has a lot to do with what Elaine mentioned just now, the social part, the emotion part, the crisis part, and also the hierarchy handling. Those are the social part. That is not taught in your university. And this is why we want to address this particular issue, integrative learning. So if you were to learn how to drive a car by using the book, this is difficult, isn't it? Because in real life, driving is like this. Say in Australia, in order to get your full license, you need to go through a series of experience build-up. You need to go through normal roads, you need to drive in major roads and the highways and hazard, and then in extreme weather. This is because there is no way out. You have to go through the process. It's an experience build-up. You cannot jump from one end to the other. So how do you teach experience in your class? So from an EdTech point of view, this is how we would like to share our approach. This is just one of the approaches. I'm sure there are a lot of approaches out there. From MonsoonSIM point of view, this is how we do it. So we digitize a lot of the business concepts into the cloud. All these are available to be configured to teach your students. And these concepts can be categorized into a very standard best practice business concept. So we have HR, services, finance, and social forecast, e-commerce, etc. So when all this is in the cloud, we then allow our teacher, which is yourself, your educators, to become facilitator. You can configure MonsoonSIM into various business scenario and let your student learn through experience. Again, it is like driving the car from left to right. You build up your experience along the way. Let's take an example. As a facilitator, let's say you build a very simple model. You configure a very simple model. It's a retail model, and let your student learn this business. So what will they learn in such a model when they play the game or simulation using MonsoonSIM? They will learn the following concept: the revenue, overhead, purchasing, profit, capacity. And they really go through the experience of having low profit, high overhead, low overhead, etc. And then as a facilitator, you can always add a little bit more complicated feature, such as loan. And then they will learn things like liability, current ratio, credit rating, and even bankruptcy. So then they will experience that bankruptcy through the simulation and gamification. Now, what if you add a little bit more like marketing? Then they will learn things like competitors' impact, the marketing ROI. They will appreciate what is the marketing intelligence, etc. Now, what if you add a little bit more? You add warehouse, procurement, etc. Then they will learn even more, such as logistics, wholesales, allocation, etc., etc. So this is what we mean by experience build up using MonsoonSIM. So come back to this picture as what the other two speakers have spoken earlier. How do you teach experience in a traditional class? Right? From Professor Hadrian's point of view, you have to really design the curriculum in such a way that it is it can lead the student through multidisciplinary concepts build up. Okay, so it's not easy, but at least the ECU is doing that. But what I'm saying is, in real life, you are not going to do things in silo. In real life, it's going to be mixed up when you work. So you need to have the knowledge of every discipline. Okay, so that's a basis of integrative learning. Again, from quoting from Harvard Business School, you need to have well-conceived integrated learners and enable students to focus on multi-dimensional issue in their full complexity. It invites them to weigh, apply, and combine discipline insights to move beyond naive views. So this is from Harvard Graduate School of Education. So this is what we are trying to do also. Let's take a look at the experience journey that we have provided in MonsoonSIM for a student. First, they will experience a very simple buying, selling, and wholesaling, overhead, etc. Then they will learn more complex business concepts such as cost of goods sold, pricing, strategy, etc. And then if they go through the process again, they will learn more such as consumer preference, vendor management, and then if they come back and go through the process again, they will pick up things like competitors, impact, capacity planning, etc. These are experience build up that you cannot force right away. You cannot jump from left to right instantly. It has to go through the process so they can have the ability to accept new challenges and new concepts, even all the way to things like cash management, HR strategy, customer service, supply chain, and even to the point where they become fully philosophical, such as why do we need teamwork? What happens if we have a bad communications? And at the end of this journey, they may even know that business is challenging. It's not as simple as they thought. So this is only when they have to go through they have gone through the process. That's why they become mature, so to speak. So MonsoonSIM allows them to go through this process. Again, it's the experience build up. Yeah. All right. So this is a little bit marketing for MonsoonSIM. So I apologize for that. We are excellent for studying the following: accounting, business schools, economics, etc. We can certainly talk more about MonsoonSIM in other time, but at the end of this presentation, I do like to invite you for a workshop that we will hold next month. In 3 hours, we're going to go through a series of experience build up through a workshop and let you see how your student, when they use MonsoonSIM, can learn all these concepts step by step. This is what we try to do. We will try to at least bring some experience learning and also the social learning into your formal education through MonsoonSIM.
Thank you, Mr. Abdy, for your illuminating presentation. We are now in our final Q&A session, so the floor is open. We also have another question coming in from Vijantini in the chat. This is directed to Mr. Abdy. Could you please give more explanation or examples on how MonsoonSIM put emotions into their model?
Okay, very good. Very good question. Can you hear me? Thank you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you, Vijantini. Absolutely, because you look at the way when you look at the students after 10 years of looking at student playing MonsoonSIM, you can see that because in a simulation and gamification, there's a lot of constraint built into the game, and there are times where they become arrogant, and there are times where they become very conservative, and you can see it from the result, and you can see it from the way they play the game. It is so apparent, okay? And there are times when they feel that they thought that they know everything, and just like what Elaine said, they actually will know that it is not true. What they thought was right was not right. So that emotion of up and down, when they feel that they are going to achieve very well, but then they turn out to be bankrupt, for example, when they run a company, that emotion is really hard. And especially when you see them able to recover from crisis. So for example, in MonsoonSIM, there are crises built in. So let's suppose we turn on the crisis in the middle of the game. And when the students, you can see them, when they can recover from the crisis, even though they lose the game, even though they lose the simulation, they will be very, very happy. And they are looking forward for the next lesson because they feel that they have overcome something. So that's the emotion part of it. I hope that answers your question.
So are you saying that it means that the student and the lecturer in the class, so they are not pure online, so it means that the lecturer can also kind of like just see how the student react during their decision.
Okay.
So that we can ask them about how the emotion and so on and so on, like what you say.
Yes. Well, when it may not be physically looking at them having this, cheerful face or very pressured emotion, but they are a reflection, as what Professor Hadrian mentioned earlier. There's a reflective learning when they, at the end of the game or at the end of any situation, when they overcome that particular challenge, you can ask them to reflect that, and they will share that experience with you. In fact, they will be very proud to share their failure with the whole forum. And that is very difficult to get. Usually people may not want to share their failure, but when they overcome their failure, they are proud to share. That is the human nature, yeah? So when you overcome something, even though you are still pretty weak, you still like to share it with other people, and you encourage and you inspire your teammates or inspire the other team to say that, look, we have overcome this difficulty. So that is what we have observed.
Hello, Abdy.
Yes, Alex.
Yeah, I would like to actually take on a question by Vijantini just now about how MonsoonSIM can put emotion into the model. So this is probably a bit of sharing with her about my experience in running the competition for the past 6 years. So basically, emotion is a very personal thing. Yeah, it's a very personal thing. So what is relevant to the real world is how people see you as you. So in MonsoonSIM as a platform, in fact, there's a lot of elements that can provoke you as you in terms of how you collaborate with others. So for example, in MonsoonSIM, we have competitiveness KPI. In the competition, we can measure the performance outcome. So therefore, just like the real world, when you run the teams or run the departments or run a company, you need to make sure that everything is in order. All the ingredients must be put in place nicely, or the quantum of every one of these cannot be overdoing it, cannot be underperformed. Yeah. So in terms of teamwork, in terms of knowledge, in terms of contribution of work. So in MonsoonSIM, we are able to identify the transaction put up by different team players within a group or within a company. So therefore, in terms of measuring the total outcome, as what Elaine has put it up here, with a time-bound outcome, and that is where you can see the students is able to use this platform to really practice and improve how they should respond and react. Of course, you can see that in the competition during the MBR-MNC, some of the losers actually cry outright. And this is actually very good. Why? Because that is where they can really practice how to handle the emotion themselves. Okay, they may gone into the extreme end of showing the bad part of it, but overall for him or her to improve is definitely very good. Now, I guess all of you know about the world top player like Excelsen, Excelsen actually have to migrate from Europe back to the Middle East, and he hired 4 sparring partners just to make sure he perform well in the competition. So same thing. I mean, when a student leave the school going into the job place, I think what they really need is sparring partners as well as a platform that can allow them to really sharpen and excel themselves. So practice make perfect. Yeah. So basically, I hope that bit of experience sharing is going to bring some light into your question on how MonsoonSIM as a platform is able to bring these benefits to the students holistically. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. I'm just wondering whether there is an empathy kind of like chart, something like that, so we can track about the sad face, or during their doing the monsoon, we can track. It means that kind of like practicing how to be a kind of team leader, maybe to empathize by seeing the chart, but maybe what you explain is quite I know that it's behind the KPI.
That's right, and in fact that's why we need a facilitator like you to really help them work out from that and to tell them the good and the bad part of it. Now generally we want performers, but in a class you can never get all performers. So the best thing is to get the lower or below par students to really able to catch up with the rest of them. And that is also another capability of MonsoonSIM, where you can really set a different KPI. So you can do high competitive KPI, low competitive KPI. So generally, I think we are trying to fit into all different level of learners. Yeah. So you cannot, there's only one winner in everything that you do. But in a workforce, you really need to make sure that they can become a good team worker or co-worker. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
If I could add something here, if you don't mind. Last year and the year before, I was part of that monsoon simulation. I was observer. I wasn't participating. And then I became a judge on that. Now, I was actually in that university seeing the student engaging. So the empathy, the social interaction, the stress point, the time management all come together. There are always knowns and unknowns, and they're trying to crack the brain to think about what they learn and try to apply. So when Abdy mentioned that when they turn on the crisis, I remember I was in that university. Abdy, remember in 2019.
Yes.
And the crisis is today you have no more loan. And that's true, because as organization, you think you always have unlimited money and you continue to burn money and you think that the finance is always black. It's not true. So I think the simulation as an interactive, as now a third party seeing it, I wish I had that when I had school. I wish I had that kind of simulation. I was 50 years ago, a child, or 40 years ago when I started learning, it's a one-way. Teacher tell you, you don't ask questions, and teacher are always very fierce. We don't get the feedback. And then we just absorb and we try to produce the best mark. But when I step out in the world, then I realize these are important. So I think simulation and gamification bring togetherness that you cannot see from the real world, because in a school constructed way, whether it's work from home, learn from home now, you're confined onto your desk. You are not supposed to tear your hair, give you a slap, I scold you, when a game. But the game bring up the true sense of that human that you need to talk. Now, coming back to winner or loser, as I mentioned, there's never going to be only one successor, but people are too shy to talk about their failure because they don't want people to see it. But guess what? Everybody could see it. When they're playing the game, we could see that some groups are better and not. It's just that the participant think that we can't see it, but it's the dare to speak out. So I think this gamification break the usual forum of a learning, cultivate the trust with the educator, have fun, because fun relaxes the mood and you dare to say, right? Now, in a school construct, when you don't have fun, you don't have a coffee, you think the student is going to challenge you, they won't dare, right? Either they don't dare or they don't care. But in a fun, where the teacher participate as well, they both cry together. So we have seen teacher cry together with the student when they don't win. And that's valuable. After that, they could see that the bonding is closer. So although I'm not part of MonsoonSIM, but I say, I wish I had that when I was young.
Thank you for your experience.
Currently, there are a few comments in the chat. For example, from Ms. Manette, said that it's certainly very insightful to Ms. Elaine, and she agrees very much on how honesty with ourselves can stimulate honesty and transparency into the students as well. And from John in the chat, he said that for Mr. Abdy, it's how true it applies to the real world as well. We are now wrapping up on our August EduTalk seminar. So just a quick reminder, for anyone who's interested in playing MonsoonSIM live, we're going to hold a MonsoonSIM workshop for educators, free with certificate, on September 25th at 9:30 a.m. Singapore time, or 8:30 a.m. Jakarta time. So if anyone's interested, the link is in the chat.